The Galactic Council chamber fell into complete silence when the warning lights began to flash. Ambassador Veleth, of the Karate species, stood frozen at his podium. His pale blue skin turned even paler. His four eyes widened with ancient fear. The message on every screen was simple and terrible. The devouring swarm had returned after 10,000 years of silence. Across the massive chamber, representatives of 47 different species began to panic. The Namori delegates dissolved into their liquid forms and flowed toward the exits. The Feks spread their membrane wings and took flight toward the escape pods. Even the massive Grothuk warriors, standing 3 meters tall with armored shells, turned and ran with surprising speed for creatures of their size. Within minutes, the greatest assembly of intelligent life in the known galaxy had become a stampede of fear. Only one delegation remained seated. The humans sat calmly in their section, watching the chaos with expressions that ranged from confusion to mild annoyance. Ambassador Sarah Chun turned to her military advisor, General Marcus Webb, and asked what all the noise was about. General Webb studied the warning message on his tablet. He had never heard of the devouring swarm before. No human had. The species had only joined the galactic community 300 years ago. Their recorded history with other alien races was still relatively short. Ambassador Veleth noticed the humans were not running. He stopped at the edge of the chamber and stared at them with disbelief. His translator device crackled as he shouted at them to flee. He told them the swarm would consume everything. Every world in their path would burn. Every creature would be devoured. This was not a battle that could be fought. Ambassador Chun stood slowly. She was not a tall woman by human standards. Compared to most alien species, she was quite small. But something in her posture made Veleth take a step backward. She asked him to explain exactly what this devouring swarm was and where it was coming from. Veleth's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. He could not understand why she wanted information instead of running. He explained quickly that the swarm was a species of pure destruction. They moved from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all biological matter. They had attacked this region of space 10,000 years ago. The only reason any species survived was because they ran far enough and fast enough. The swarm eventually moved on to easier prey. General Webb stood beside the ambassador. He asked how large this swarm was and what kind of weapons they used. Veleth made a sound of frustration. He told them there was no time for questions. The swarm fleet was already detected at the edge of the Kronak system. That was only 12 standard days away at maximum jump speed. Every species needed to evacuate immediately. Ships were already being loaded. Colony worlds were being abandoned. Ambassador Chun looked at General Webb. She asked him if 12 days was enough time. The general smiled slightly. He said 12 days was more than enough. Veleth watched the two humans communicating with hand signals and quiet words. He did not understand what he was seeing. Every soft species in the galaxy knew the same truth. When the predator comes, you run. When the storm arrives, you hide. When death approaches, you flee. This was the fundamental law of survival that had kept intelligent life existing for millions of years. The humans did not seem to understand this law. Ambassador Chun activated her communication device. She connected to Earth Command and began requesting immediate deployment of the 4th Fleet to the Kronak system. She asked for full combat readiness. She asked for heavy bombardment vessels. She asked for ground troops. Veleth grabbed her arm with 3 of his 4 hands. His grip was weak compared to hers, but his desperation was strong. He begged her to understand that fighting was impossible. The swarm numbered in the billions. Their ships were organic weapons. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. They only consumed. Ambassador Chun gently removed his hands from her arm. She told him that humans had faced extinction before. Many times, actually. They had been hunted by predators when they were still learning to walk upright. They had survived ice ages and volcanic eruptions. They had lived through plagues that killed half their population. They had endured wars that burned entire continents. She told him that humans were not a soft species. They were the product of a brutal world that had tried to kill them for 200,000 years. Their bodies carried the scars of evolution. Their bones were dense. Their muscles were strong. Their hearts could pump blood for hours during pursuit. Their minds were wired for violence and survival in equal measure. General Webb added that humans had never run from a fight they could win, and they had never lost a fight they truly committed to winning. Veleth asked what made them think they could win against the swarm. The general said they would not know until they tried. The next 12 days changed the history of the galaxy forever. While every other species continued their evacuation, abandoning worlds that had been their homes for thousands of years, humanity mobilized for war. Ships that had been designed for exploration were retrofitted with weapons. Mining vessels were converted into armored transports. Factories on a dozen human colony worlds began producing ammunition and supplies around the clock. The Galactic Council watched from their fleeing ships with growing amazement. They had never seen anything like the human response. Most species in the galaxy had evolved as prey. Their survival instincts told them to hide, to blend in, to escape. Even the warrior species like the Grothic preferred to avoid conflicts where the outcome was uncertain. Humans were different. Their survival instinct told them to fight. When threatened, they did not show fear. They showed anger. The Fourth Fleet arrived in the Kronak system with 48 hours to spare. Admiral James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the carrier vessel Resilience and studied the tactical display. His fleet was small compared to what the reports described. 300 ships against an enemy that numbered in the millions. But Admiral Okonkwo had studied the limited data about the swarm carefully. He noticed that their previous attacks had always targeted species that ran. The swarm was designed to chase. They were predators hunting prey. They had never encountered a species that stood still and waited for them. The swarm arrived exactly on schedule. Their fleet emerged from hyperspace like a cloud of locusts. The organic ships pulsed with strange bioluminescent lights. They moved in patterns that seemed almost random, but actually followed complex hunting algorithms. They expected their prey to run. They expected chase. Instead, the human fleet advanced toward them. The first volley of missiles caught the swarm completely by surprise. Their organic ships had limited defensive capabilities because they had never needed defenses. No species had ever attacked them directly. The explosions ripped through the front ranks of the swarm fleet, destroying hundreds of vessels in seconds. Admiral Okonkwo ordered a second volley, then a third. The swarm reacted with confusion. Their hunting patterns were designed for pursuit, not combat. They tried to spread out and surround the human fleet, but the humans had anticipated this tactic. Smaller destroyers broke formation and began targeted strikes against the swarm's larger vessels. On one of the fleeing evacuation ships, Veleth watched the battle unfold on a long-range scanner. His four eyes could not believe what they were seeing. The humans were actually winning. Not just surviving, but actively destroying the enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. The battle lasted for 6 standard days. Human casualties were significant but not catastrophic. The swarm lost 40% of their fleet before they finally broke and retreated. It was the first time in recorded galactic history that the devouring swarm had ever retreated from anything. Admiral Okonkwo did not allow them to escape easily. The human fleet pursued the retreating swarm for 3 more days, destroying stragglers and damaged vessels. When the remaining swarm ships finally jumped to hyperspace and fled toward unknown regions of space, the humans celebrated their victory. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than any message had ever traveled before. Species that had been running for weeks stopped their evacuation ships and stared at their communication screens. The devouring swarm had been defeated. The monster that had haunted galactic nightmares for 10,000 years had been beaten by a species that had only joined the community 3 centuries ago. Ambassador Veleth requested an immediate meeting with Ambassador Chun. When they met on a neutral station, he fell to his knees and pressed his forehead to the ground in the traditional Karathi gesture of absolute respect. He asked her how the humans had done the impossible. Ambassador Chun helped him stand. She explained that humans were not braver than other species. They were not smarter or stronger or more advanced. The difference was simple. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters. For millions of years, their ancestors had survived by chasing prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. This had shaped their entire psychology. When humans faced a threat, their first instinct was not to run. Their first instinct was to chase. They did not see predators as things to fear. They saw predators as things to hunt. Veleth asked what would happen if the swarm returned with a larger fleet. General Webb, standing nearby, said that humanity hoped they would return. The human fleet had learned a great deal from this first engagement. The next battle would be even more one-sided. Veleth spent the rest of his long life trying to explain to other species what he had witnessed. He told them that the galaxy had been wrong about survival. Running was not always the answer. Sometimes the only way to survive was to stand and fight. Many species did not believe him at first. Their instincts were too strong. The memory of predators was written into their genetic code. But slowly, over generations, the example of humanity began to change things. Other species started training military forces. Defensive fleets were constructed. The automatic response of fear was gradually replaced with something new. Something that the soft species had never known before. Courage. 300 years after the Battle of Kronax, the devouring swarm returned with a fleet 10 times larger than before. They expected to find the same frightened galaxy they had always hunted. They expected easy prey. Instead, they found a united armada of 200 species waiting for them. Karathi warships flew beside Namori carriers. Fax interceptors escorted Grothic assault vessels. And at the center of the formation, the human flagship Persistence led the charge. The soft species had learned to become hard. The prey had learned to become predators. And when the swarm saw what waited for them, they did something that shocked observers across the galaxy. The devouring swarm turned and ran. Ambassador Chen, now very old and watching from a diplomatic vessel far from the battle lines, smiled when she heard the report. She had spent her entire career teaching other species one simple lesson. The universe was full of darkness and danger. Monsters lurked in every shadow. But the answer was never to run from the darkness. The answer was to become the thing that monsters feared. Humanity had always understood this truth. Now the rest of the galaxy understood it too. The age of soft species was over. A new age had begun. An age where intelligent life no longer hid from threats, but faced them together. The stars had never been safer.